and then the environment was cleaned up.
The first time I was hearing about this stuff, it was totally new to me.
With social impact consulting. Hello everyone, my name is Efwa Elens Ede with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you. Hello everyone. Thank you for watching the Development Sector Series, which is Dev Sector Series. Are you interested in sponsoring Dev Sector Series? Please call me at 234-703-539-8086. As we spread your brand, we spread around the world. And as we do that, we're all changing the world. So let's work together. Contact me so that we can maximize social impact. I look forward to hearing from you. Hello everyone, Happy New Year! Welcome to the very first live episode of the Development Sector Series, which is Dev Sector Series. Please make sure you like and share this live streaming so that we can get it to more and more people. So if you're on Facebook, please follow Social Impact Consulting, Truly Unique Limited, and Transform Nigeria if you want more on Dev Sector Series, okay? I have great things in store for us in 2022. So much is going to be happening. But as you share and like this live streaming, it will help the algorithm share it to more people. And let me know where you're watching from, whether it be Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Edo, Enugu, Imo, anywhere. Just let me know where you're hailing from so I can thank you personally. So for those of you who are on YouTube, like I said earlier, please subscribe and click on the bell notification so that you can be notified of future streaming videos from me. So on Facebook, there's a link down that says, that tells you to be notified when I go live. So just click on it so that you're notified, okay? So for those of us here in Nigeria, we're headed towards the 2023 national elections and gubernatorial elections in Ekiti and Osun State. So today, I'm going to be speaking to a very special person. He's actually one of my mentors in the development sector. So like before I relocated to Nigeria in 2012, the organization I worked with in Chicago, which is Target Area Development, partnered with the MacArthur Foundation on issues such as criminal justice reform and prisoner reentry. So when I became the ED of Junior Achievement Nigeria in 2015, as you know, resource mobilization is one of the major responsibilities of an executive director, right? So I flew to MacArthur's office and, well, Dr. Coley was not around at the time, so I met Dayo and we chatted for almost 2 hours. This meeting I had with him was one of the most pivotal ones in my career, and I'll never forget it. And I have taken him as a mentor ever since. He is a gift to the civil society sector in Nigeria and Africa as we know it. Anytime I'm talking to my colleagues about him, they have nothing but glowing things to say about him. And that is really, really something that he has made his mark here in the sector. There was even one of my colleagues that says, anytime I'm talking to Dayo, I usually record the call because he says things that are so, so impactful that strategies and things you can do to move your organization forward, that I need to hear some of that stuff again so that it helps me become more impactful. So it's just, such a blessing that he's even taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to talk with us. So before I play his video bio, if you have any questions for him, because we're going to be talking about CSOs and elections, and he has been in the trenches for decades. Okay, so if you have any questions, in terms of this insightful interview that we have, please make sure you include it in the comment section. So well, what are we waiting for? Without further delay, I am going to be sharing his video bio, okay? So stay tuned. We'll be coming right up. Olaide is an accomplished development specialist and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Nigeria. He has more than 25 years of experience in the development sector as an accountant, resource mobilization expert, program management, advocacy, and mentoring. He is the Deputy Director of the MacArthur Foundation. In that role, he manages a portfolio of grants to strengthen investigative journalism, administration of criminal justice, and the use of behavioral insights in the Foundation's program focused on helping Nigeria reduce corruption. Mr. Olaide started his career as a project accountant for the Civil Liberties Organization in 1995 and rose to become the head of CLO's Resource Mobilization Unit, a position he combined with the position of accountant until he left in 2007. Later in 2007, he joined the Open Society Initiative West Africa, OSIWA. He was the head of OSIWA Nigeria office and helped to support the birth of the very first civil society election situation room in 2011, which became a success and a template for coordinated engagement of civil society and broader non-state actor groups in elections planning and management. He relocated to OSIWA's regional headquarters in Dakar, Senegal, as regional manager. When he returned to Nigeria in 2013, he joined the Nigeria Stability and Reconciliation Program, a 5-year DFID-funded program jointly managed by British Council, International Alert, and Social Development Direct. Mr. Olaide holds an MBA in Finance from Olabisi Onabanjo University, an MA in Development Studies with a major in Public Policy and Management from the International Institute of Social Studies in the Netherlands. He has attended several leadership development and policy reform programs, including at the prestigious Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Allow me to introduce you to Mr. Dayo Olaide. Hello.
Hi, Efwa. Oh,
Thank
goodness.
you so
I wasn't quite sure who you were actually introducing. Is it me or someone else?
Yes, so it's you. I really, what I tell my my guests is that I try to make sure that I showcase the work that they do, because a lot of times most people who are working are always in the trenches and saying, okay, what's next?
Thank
You don't realize how much work that you've done over the years, and that's every time they're like, is that me? I don't think so. It must be somebody.
Exactly. That's what I kept asking myself. But
So
thank you for the kind words and the very generous introduction. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you so much for just all you do. Thank you for all you do. You're such a gift to us. I think there was a time I called you on a Sunday and I'm like, I know you're busy, but please tell your family that they've given you to us.
I remember.
They've given you to us too. So we're gonna be talking about CSOs and election, because we're heading towards the election year. We're already seeing banners all over the place of people whose interest is to be chairman of political parties. People are indicating their interest for different offices. So folks are warming up to it. So it's like just having a conversation about civil society and what our role is and how we increase citizen engagement, how, lessons learned from, because you've been observing elections for the longest. So in terms of how, what lessons are being learned and how we do things moving forward. So I'm just going to get started. So in general, what are your thoughts as being in the sector for so many years and multiple decades? What are your thoughts of civil society in Nigeria? Because you've not only dealt with civil society in Nigeria, you have dealt with civil society in other countries. But so if you can share your thoughts for us.
First, let me start by saying that please don't create the impression that I'm a Methuselah in this sector. I'm just a young man. I'm just a young man trying to do my thing. So when you say multiple decades, please, there is a possibility that some might be asking, man, it's time to get off the stage. But having said that, I think my one sentence about Nigerian civil society is that Nigeria has a very robust civil society in place. And in the last, limiting myself to in the last 21 years, we have seen a massive growth in the population of civil society groups in the country. And when I came into the sector in the 90s, early stroke mid 90s, we could count NGOs, organized NGOs, on my fingertips. It's about CLO, CDHR, CRP, CD, and women in Nigeria, and just a handful. But post the transition, we have seen a proliferation of NGOs in the country. We have also witnessed a lot of CSOs playing leading innovations in the country. So today we can talk about the budgets, the codes. These are NGOs that have evolved in the last 10 years and have just become specialists in specific areas of work that they have defined for themselves. And I think it's also important to note that in the last 21 years, we have also seen CSOs, and non-profit organizations spread across so many sectors, whether it's education, it's health, it's water, it's agriculture, it's the fight against rape and other forms of gender-based violence, issues of rural livelihoods. I think civil society groups have just multiplied, mushroomed across the place. And it's important to state that in many of these places where you actually find them, the interventions and the projects that civil society groups are implementing often is the only lifeline for a lot of vulnerable, marginalized communities. So they are doing great, fantastic work, filling the gap in those areas that businesses and governments are unable to respond to. But perhaps most significantly is the point that they have also grown their voices in the democratic processes. So whether it's in terms of policy research, it's policy advocacy, it's about legislation, it's about mobilizing citizens' involvement, pushing for transparency and accountability. It's to the credit of CSOs, for example, that Nigeria now has a Freedom of Information Act, a Fiscal Responsibility Act, a Public Procurement Act, the NATI Act, the VAP Act, and there are so many legislations and policies that are in place today, massively due to the work of civil society groups. But however, it's not all positives and positives. I think for me, two major things that worries me. One, I think that to a large extent, the work of civil society groups are still undervalued and underappreciated.
Yes.
Which makes them really vulnerable. That's why any autocratic or authoritarian administration that gets to office today can badmouth them. So I think their work is still significantly underappreciated. And then secondly is I feel that the transition that we saw in 1999, pre 1999 to post 1999, that's from military rule to civilian rule. While it was good, I think it was good in the sense that it led to professionalization of non-profit organizations in the country. But it also had the unwanted effect of thereby breaking or weakening the connection between civil society groups and the citizens. I mean, when I mentioned CLOs, the CDHR, these were organizations that were structurally, they were ideologically, they were operationally connected to citizens, so that a CLO can issue a stay home, release, and Nigerians will stay home. A CDHR could mobilize Nigerians and say, we're going to protest, and they will come out. So I think that pre and post, while we have seen a lot of professionalization taking place across among civil society groups, I think that professionalization has also had that, undesired effect of weakening the connections between civil society groups and the public. But otherwise, I think Nigeria is lucky to have a really robust civil society a structure in place.
I can't agree with you more in terms of the robustness of civil society. And I think it's a very delicate balance in terms of making sure that there's civic engagement and then also institutionalizing the organization. Because the organization I worked for in Chicago, the budget was, was about $150,000. And there was still a lot of volunteer-based work, and there was still a lot of grassroots mobilization. But when we now began to re-strategize and then institutionalize the organization and really network with our peers and donors and what have you, the budget increased, we're able to pass legislation. There now became a slight disconnect between the organization and the community. And so, I was tasked with I was given the task of still being an organizer and collecting information, collecting data, and still having community town halls. So I feel like it has to be a very deliberate and intentional strategy to, yes, you want to maintain your institution, you want to be able to be sustainable, but you still need to have the pulse of the community. So it's really, you really gave a very broad scenario of civil society, and really making sure that they are valued. They are valued, because the value of civil society cannot be overemphasized in Nigeria, because our country is not perfect. We all know that. But I feel like civil society is the last frontier in terms of making sure that the nation is democratic, and then we still have citizen voices. So that was a really excellent definition. And this next question, you already touched on it already. Just a sec. You touched on it, like in terms of how the sector has been able to engage with the Nigerian government. You've already talked about multiple legislations that have been passed. Do you want to just kind of talk a little bit more on how we've been able to engage with government to make sure these things happen?
So yes, I think I touched a part of it. I think I'll just add a few things, to take note of. So pre 1999, we had those first generation non-profits that I just referred to, CLO, CDHR, CRP, CD. One of the distinguishing factors, or characteristics of this.
Okay. Looks like there's a slight network issue. I think hopefully he will come on shortly. Looks like there's a slight network issue. So please bear with us. We try to make sure that the network is is really good to connect. But with technology, we have the good and the bad in terms of increasing connectivity. But we'll see how we can get him back in as soon as possible. Just a second. So a second. So just a second. Okay. So, we're talking about how the sector is being able to engage with the Nigerian government. And, as you know, in the last question, Dayo responded, he said there has been Act, the VAP Act, and various other acts that have been passed as a result of CSO engagement. Okay, there he is. Let's get him. Okay.
So sorry about that.
No, this is
it's our reality.
part of
It's
our
our new
reality here.
Yeah. So I was saying that, what we see today as a more partnership oriented, civil society sector hasn't always been the case. Pre 1999, a lot of those first generation nonprofits that I talked about were more adversarial. The CLOs, for example. There is a human rights violation. They want to go investigate, and then the next thing is they do the report and go to the radio or TV and just lambast government. But that has changed. Okay, that has changed beginning with 1999, forward, so that today we have the more recent second generation, third generation nonprofits that are more, that embrace partnership, that will approach governments and government agencies. They will approach the legislative arm. For example, CISLAC today is seen as one of the frontline organizations working on issues related to, legislative reform. PLAC, the Policy and Legislative Advocacy Center. So you see that we have seen a transition as well that I think has contributed to the quality of engagement between nonprofits and government. Primarily because of the change in attitude and change in orientation, from being adversarial to more partnership oriented. And I think the second thing that I think is also worthy of paying attention to is that, unlike the days of CLO and CRP, where it was just, the CLO, for example, was more of a generalist organization, was doing law enforcement, human rights education, was doing police reform, was doing penal reform. Today, we are seeing, intentional, civil society groups are becoming more intentional in terms of specialization. So a CLAIM foundation, for example, starts and ends with police reforms, and everything they do is about police reform. A budget, for example, it's about financial management transparency. How do you ensure that the rules and the processes for managing finances, the country's resources are transparent and make meaning, to Nigerians. So they focus on budget, analysis and producing infographics that Nigerians will understand. You take a code, for example, their focus is, look, we want Nigerians to be able to follow the money wherever it goes. So they work directly with communities, teaching them on social accountability tools, teaching them on budget interpretation, budget analysis, and all of that. And so you find that in today's Nigerian civil society sector, right, we have been able to make a shift from those pre-1999 to a more collaborative, a more specialist sector that I think has enhanced and improved the quality of engagement. So CLAIM, for example, is an authority on anything that has to do with police reform. Unlike back in the days when CLO was managing all of this basket of interventions. I think that with the specialization that we are seeing and the adoption of a more collaborative and partnership ideology among non-profits, this is particularly enabling the quality of engagement. Take a Yaga, for example. Today, you mentioned Yaga, the first thing that comes to mind is elections. And you can see Yaga actually being able to sit down with, whether it was in the days of Professor Atahiru Jega, to sit down and discuss election matters with them. Or even now under Professor Mahmoud, they're able to sit down, get the key actors involved in the elections management and elections planning, and have discussions, identify problems, jointly develop interventions, and they can sometimes even go out there to look for resources. So I think these two developments that we have seen are so critical, and to a large extent they shape the level of quality, the depth of engagement between civil society groups and government, as well as the quality of the impact that civil society groups are able to bring into change discourse in the country.
Thank you so much for that very robust response, because I feel like civil society has changed more from adversarial to more collaborative, because sometimes I think there was something that when I conducted a Devsectorseries with Hamzat, and he was saying there are sometimes that the government, they don't know, so if you're demanding some sort of accountability, some of them don't even know what you're talking about. Yep. So if when you're able to work together, that you're able to get a lot done. And also, I feel like just like Hamzi had said at the time, they changed their nature of engagement to more, okay, can you meet with us? Can we discuss? So there's a bit of trust there between the organization and the government agency, where you can now get into a successful outcome. And I have noticed that most of the successful CSOs, especially as we observe in Nigeria, have been more collaborative. Is when there is it's more of a carrot and stick approach. And I've seen it with code, I've seen it with Yaga, I've seen it with budget. It's like, okay, you can work with us if we have the same agenda, but if we're demanding accountability, it's not giving them, there's a stick approach. So there's a delicate balance between the two. So now that the audience has really known holistically about civil society, their role, and how they've evolved over the past couple of decades, we're going to now go into elections. So now, like you alluded to earlier, and there are other organizations that do observe elections as well, both national and international. But from your observation in 2019 during the electoral process, from the gubernatorial and the national elections, what do you feel are some of the lessons learned?
So I think that my first reaction will be to acknowledge the improvement and the growth that we have seen in our electoral processes. Because sometimes we are so sucked in by the lingering challenges. So it takes away our attention from recognizing and actually applauding ourselves for the progress that we have made. There was a period in our electoral history that we had a voter register that had Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and the rest of such names, in our list, in our voter register.
Oh, seriously?
Today, oh yes.
Wow.
Today we have made significant progress in terms of how do we ensure the integrity of our voter register. There was a period in our electoral system, in our electoral history, where we had an INEC that was completely closed to the public under the leadership of Iwu, for example. Today, we have an INEC that is very collaborative, very deliberate and intentional in reaching out to political parties, media organizations, civil society groups, international organizations, to be able to work collaboratively to improve the electoral process, logistics, planning, transparency, accountability, and the conduct of the elections as well. There was a period when, every elections comes with ballot snatching, and ballot stuffing and all of that. They still do happen, but you'll find that, we can also not fail to acknowledge progress that we have made as a result of the infusion of technology into the electoral processes. So I think it's important that we understand that our elections are no longer like they were in 1999 or 2003, or even the worst elections that we all refer to, 2007. Post 2007, we have seen progress. And I think that a lot of those progress are the result of lessons learned. Some of those lessons were, how could we, for example, reduce the opportunities for voter ballot snatching, ballot stuffing. And so the electoral reforms that we have seen, up to this point, is always building on lessons learned. So you'll find, when you say what are some of those lessons learned, I will say that a significant part of the lessons learned is what you see today expressed in the improvement in our electoral laws. A significant part of the lessons learned is what you see today expressed as an INEC that is more transparent and that is more invested in elections planning, in a more systematic way. It's as a result of the lessons learned. The technology, the role of technology that we have seen also continually improving and growing in our elections, I think is also part of the lessons learned, that we will need technology to help us reduce indiscretion, whether it's in terms of amongst election staff, or even security, or even voters. So technology has also been one of the major lessons, in the last 21 years of our elections. And I think that civil society groups too have learned a great deal. Time was when elections monitoring was mostly traditional. So you take your papers, you go to the field, and you try to document. But today, you find that our elections every 4 years comes with enormous documentation as a result of the use of videos, multimedia, social media. Practically every part of our electoral process today can be found either on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter. So social media as well has been a major lessons, or what you might call a major influence in our electoral process. So I think that certainly between 1999 and now, there's a lot of progress that we have made, but there are still challenges, and many of those challenges, I will say that many of them are still human related. Resistance to reforms that are most critical to be able to improve some of the outstanding challenges in our laws. Human resistance to reforms that will improve transparency in political campaign spending, for example. Resistance to reforms that will hold electoral offenders or elections offenders accountable. Human resistance to technology that will improve the counting and the declaration of election results. Human resistance to reforms that will further guarantee the independence of INEC. So these are some of the outstanding challenges that I think just has to continue to engage us as a people and as a nation.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. These are, also acknowledging the improvement is also helpful for our audience to not just see the glass half empty, but as the glass half full. So just a quick follow-up question. The Electoral Act, there has been a bit of back and forth with it. When it got assented towards the presidency, he sent it back. Says that there were some mistakes, and also with regards to the I think something with the primary elections, that having to conduct primary elections. So can you just talk a little bit more about how we can? And I know that Yaga Africa conducted a citizen town hall that was streamed live on various channels. Yeah. So what can we do? What can civil society continue to do policy-wise, which is some of what Yaga is doing and other organizations, and also through to citizen engagement? So what can we do to even ensure more transparency? You said, because based on what you've said, is that there is some transparency right now, which is based on the improvement you alluded to. But how can we ensure more transparency?
So you see, I think there are quite a number of ways which we can engage this. But I want to start with the masterstroke event that Yaga had a couple of days back. I mean, yes. I thought the town hall meeting is a masterstroke. The opportunity to be able to bring the political parties, to bring citizen groups, to bring media, to bring international organizations on a live telecast and talk about the electoral bill. I think it has multiplied the pressure on the National Assembly to try and conclude actions on the electoral bill. And my hope will be that, with the commitment that we heard from various organizations represented, present at that event, the NBA, promising to reach out to members of the National Assembly who are lawyers, civil society groups promising to continue to engage members of the National Assembly, the media assuring the public that yes, we will continue to focus on the electoral bill. My hope will be that will, help to keep the electoral bill as a critical part of what we need to complete, before and on time before the 2023 elections. I think the Electoral Act is a significant and a critical part of the infrastructures we need for transparency, because it affects so many things. INEC, it affects citizens' participation, civil society groups, advocacy groups, and therefore we need to have that. But having said that, there are a couple of things that historically we have always done to improve transparency. Now, with the new technology that INEC has tested in the Anambra elections, my hope will be that in the countdown to 2023, that INEC will try and improve on this. And why is this critical, in my own opinion? It's that it extends, INEC's infrastructure to what has been described by, a lot of the key stakeholders as the weakest link in our electoral process: counting of elections, counting of results.
Yes.
If we I think that seems to have been the aspect of our electoral process lagging behind for years. Now, finally, we are getting to a point where we can say elections results actually truly reflect the votes and the voices of citizens. I think that will be a critical part of the transparency that we are talking about. So that's bringing out issues of technology and how that can help us to improve transparency. I think we must also commend something that was first tested in the country in 2011 by then TMG. That's the parallel voter tabulation system.
Yes.
Why is this important for me? I think a system that provides a solid check, on INEC is a critical requirement in any elections. You want something, you want a structure or in an infrastructure or a capability that is able to provide alternative to say you are, yes, you as the election management body, you have the constitutional responsibility to conduct the elections. But civil society groups have also been able to develop the capacity to be able to shadow the process and, within an error limit, actually provide evidence when an election has been manipulated or not. So I think that Nigerians need to continue to embrace that process. That process at the moment is being led by YAGA. And my hope would be that they also will continue to improve in that process. We need that process as part of our infrastructure for ensuring transparency. I think we need to also continue to advocate for more Nigerians to participate in the elections.
Yes.
It is when Nigerians stayed away from voting that party officials, election officials, security officials can then manipulate the process. We cannot have a democracy without Democrats. We cannot have democracy without voters. So we need to get more voters out there, for every elections. In the last
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to go into because you're answering the next question in terms of engaging citizens to increase voter turnout. So you can continue, sir, because you went into that answer.
So thank you for that interruption, because I think you're absolutely correct. I think that for a very long time, our elections monitoring has been, we need to get, it's about voter education, it's about voter mobilization. These are important, right? The infrastructures are important. Getting citizens out there to monitor the election process, like I was saying, is critical, for to ensure there is transparency and the entire integrity of the entire process. So whether it's in terms of integrity of the conduct of or attitude of INEC staff, security staff, political parties, and their representatives, even voters as well. So you need citizens to be able to come out and be involved. But if we go back to the figures now, in the early elections of 1999, 2003, 2007, a lot of the figures were manufactured. So in some states, we had 90% turnout, voter turnout, 80% voter turnout. I think we are getting to a more realistic point. But at the same time, it's also troubling to see that, continuously voter turnout is on the decline. It's on the decline. We need to fix this. And conversation about fixing this cannot just be framed around voter turnout, framed around improving the electoral processes. Because we say that if citizens know that, I can go to the polling unit and be done with my voting in 2-3 hours, it makes it's an incentive, or that they are sure that they are safe. It's an incentive. But I think perhaps the biggest part of the incentive is when citizens know that democracy actually is delivering to them. Yeah. This hasn't been part of the election conversation. It has been left more to the governance conversation. How do we ensure that governance deliver dividend? But I think that right now we need to stretch that conversation and begin to make connections between elections and governance, because until and unless
Mm.
Nigerians are able to are assured that yes, democracy is actually delivering good thing,
I
is
see.
impacting my life, I think they are likely to continue to just want to stay away, because the question is whether I vote or not, these people will get into office anyway. And when they do get to office, what's my benefit? The benefit is to them, because then they can claim legitimacy. But in terms of the benefit to me, it's almost zero. So I think while we may talk about the role of civil society groups in mobilizing citizens or voters to include educating them, advocating for a simplified electoral process, advocating for more security during elections, advocating for more transparency in the electoral process. All of these are important to get citizens involved. But I think probably the most significantly now is we need to begin to push the conversation to also include governance. If government is not working for citizens, why should citizens come out to vote?
That's then that means that there's a bit of a conundrum. So that means like CSOs and just citizens in general, we need to be able to make those connections.
Absolutely.
So okay, let's okay, so even if we say we start from the electoral process and then we try to get more voter turnout or whatever, it's like, okay, so now that you have been elected, these are the demands of the citizens, and then actually having us follow up with that certain administration, and then kind of carrying citizens along, like, okay, this was the manifesto. This is yes or no. Okay, do we vote them out or do we keep them? And then making it that the interest on governance is connected to voting. So I think
Absolutely.
if those connections are made, then that can happen. Because from the way I look at it, I feel like I from my observation, civil society is the platform that citizens can engage government. You can't. So if let's say I want to register more people to vote, it will behoove me to go to an organization, maybe like Primorg or Yaga or some other organization to work with the team to register people to vote, or to volunteer to organize a radio town hall or a physical town hall meeting. So it's just, I still feel like if there's that connection between civil society and the general public, I feel like that a lot of times we talk about the symptoms and then we don't talk about the root cause. And I think you mentioned it at an event we were in, that we need to make those connections between citizens and civil society, because these same civil society organizations were started by citizens that were concerned about an issue. So it's like, okay, how do we make those connections so that they're like, okay, we can engage with civil society, we can volunteer, and then take the lead in making sure that our interests are being met, especially when it comes to good governance, whether it be humanitarian work, whether it be nutrition, wash, whatever the initiative might be. But with voter turnout, you have really made that connection between governance. If there's good governance, then there's a possibility of high voter turnout. Now, I'm just going to talk to the audience. I have a few questions here, but if you all have any questions for Mr. Olaide, please put it in the comment section, and then we'll follow up with some of these questions. So you did allude to CSO's engagement with INEC, that INEC has been more deliberate and intentional about engagement with citizens, engagement with civil society organizations, as an election as an EMB. So is there more that can be done? Is there anything that could make things better to ensure that there's a more fluid engagement, or it can get more fluid than it is now? Because I know that CSOs are engaging with INEC, and I know that there's some partnership, but is there anything that can be better from that process?
First is to acknowledge that the relationship between INEC and civil society groups has significantly improved. You know, for like I mentioned earlier, beginning, right from the days of the emergence of Professor Atairu Jega, the commission has become more deliberate and intentional in reaching out to civil society groups. And you can see partnership in so many forms. You see partnerships in terms of civil society groups serving to pilot or even do research for that, some of which INEC then is able to build on. You see, during elections, you see situation room, that allows INEC to be able to get on the spot feedback in terms of what is happening out there, and enable INEC to be able to quickly correct, self-correct. If we take the Anambra elections, for example, you saw a situation where civil society groups were able to quickly report, in X number of communities, there are no INEC staff, or there are shortages of materials, or security or police officers are not there, or there is a potential crisis. Can you deploy more response system there, or there is a breakdown in the technology that was being used? Can you quickly fix this? So all of this for me is a result of the partnership and the trust that has now evolved. Similarly, in terms of the electoral process, we've also seen a much more robust partnership taking place between INEC and civil society groups. A lot of the issues that civil society groups are canvassing for today, many of them are actually as a result of conversations, meetings, dialogues that they've had with INEC. So all of that, I think it's important. Perhaps the biggest part of what INEC the biggest area that I think there can be an improvement right now has to do with what INEC needs to do, has to do with some of the aspects of INEC's responsibilities that INEC is unable to deliver right now. So take one of them being INEC has a responsibility to observe and ensure that there is compliance with internal democratic processes in the political parties. It's extremely difficult. It's an extremely difficult area for INEC to play that role. So I think one of the things that I would hope that INEC can actually do is to have regular sit-downs with civil society groups in those, and draw their attention, charge them. What can we do to be able to activate this responsibility that we as INEC have? So I just give give an example. Another example is political party financing, or campaign financing. It's impossible for INEC to monitor and hold candidates or political parties accountable on this type of issue. But however, INEC can sit down with select non-profit organizations and just get them to do research, and not just research. They can also come up with policy briefs that can help INEC begin to internalize how some of these things can happen. There is don't forget that there is the Electoral Institute, which is the research arm of INEC. The Electoral Institute can be the main agency, the main voice of INEC in such partnerships, because it is when INEC is able to, annually or probably even I don't know whether they want to do it annually or however frequently they choose. But there has to be a process of sitting back, looking at the INEC Act, the Electoral Act, and going through the responsibilities of INEC and prioritizing. INEC ought to be able to say in the next 4 years, we want to be able to acquire the capacity to be able to monitor campaign financing in Nigeria effectively. And there is a plan for doing that. And such plan can be developed in collaboration with civil society groups. One of the things I have canvassed for example, is that political parties and candidates should have first the responsibility for reporting their spending on campaigns. Because Nigeria is, 90% or more of our transactions are cash-based. We're a cash-based economy. So a lot of transactions do take place without trail. The only people that will have that will know what they are doing are the owners of the funds, not INEC, not regulators. So we ought to be able to come to a conclusion to say that, given our peculiarities, what should our process be for campaign finance monitoring? Who should have the responsibility? Internet again. I'm connected. I think this time around it's a four. Where are you?
Hello. So sorry about the network. We're having network issues.
Well, I handed the baton to you, so
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do now is go into the questions. I have a question over here from Tina Hannes. She says, I am interested in knowing what can be done with regards to accountability, prosecution of offenders, spending by candidates. You talked about that, enticing voters with cash at polling units, ballot box snatching. You talked about that. Then polling venues and premises of individuals. Whoa. Voter intimidation is real in the local governments. So that's
I mean, Tina's question is a basket full of issues. So I think that regarding accountability, in the electoral, or let's even limit that to, accountability for voter offenses. These has been on the table since, I mean, as far back as I can remember, 2007. If you remember, the US report actually made a recommendation to establish a voter. I can't remember the title now, but the recommendation basically was we need to have a voter offenders commission that can deal with electoral offenders.
yeah.
Up to now, that has not been done. And so you have a situation where some of the beneficiaries, and who by extension were also the funders for some of the violence recorded in our elections, they are sitting as senators, as members of the House of Rep, as governors today in the country. And so I totally agree with you that I will say that we need to have that election offenders commission that is able to deal with every election offense. Right now, that's missing. Secondly, in terms of prosecution of offenders, I think that since that I think will be dealt with if we have that specialized commission in place. And with regard to spending by candidates, I think just like I alluded to, the fact that we live in a cash-based economy makes it extremely difficult for INEC to be able to monitor spending by candidates. However, just as we have in the oil sector, today, Nigeria relies on the oil multinationals to actually account for what is lifted, what is produced, and all of that. I think we can also start with similar system in place, which will be that candidates would have to provide a report of their spending. Political parties would also have a shared responsibility. I think if we started with that, okay, we will begin to see at least develop data that then enables us, because you can be sure that there will be some mago in the figures that will be reported. And in the absence of a clear process or system for catching, any misreporting or misinformation, they will likely want to, they will get away with it. But I think if we start, no matter, start from a very weak point, no matter how inadequate that process is, we can always build on it. Right now, INEC has no way of monitoring or tracking. And we are talking about candidates. We are talking about the contributors. Contributors can be individuals, contributors can be companies. There has to be a system of ensuring that, shifting the burden, the responsibility to those who are actually doing the spending, who are transferring the cash. If we started with that, I think that we can make progress, in the coming years. And I think that to a large extent, some of these other issues that you raised here, vote buying, ballot box snatching, all of those can be dealt with in our electoral act if we have an electoral act that is comprehensive and responds to all of this, including, locating polling units and premises of powerful or influential individuals,
Yes.
voter intimidation, all of those things can be covered in our electoral act. But it will require having a body that can also ensure compliance and hold offenders to account for our electoral act to be able to bite. Having the law itself is inadequate. We must have a system that allows us to be able to enforce and hold, sanction violation or violators of our law, for us to be able to say, yes, now we have a law that is strong and can bite.
Yeah.
So
Because
thank
with
you.
these laws, you need implementation, and it needs to be enforced. I also have another comment by Ajiampe Ashang. She says, great conversation, Ogadi, as usual. On the declining voter turnout and the larger governance conversation, you are right. However, Nigerians have adopted a us versus them. That's we citizens versus them, which is the politicians' approach to government, which is totally wrong. Government is made up of Nigerian people from all facets of life, including civil society. Why do they change when they get into office? Electoral offenders and corrupt officials must be punished so citizens do not think governance is business as usual. And then
So I agree with Agampe. We are, like I said, we have made progress. We've made progress. But conversations on elections and governance seems to be, is at the moment separated. We need to make those connections. Okay, I think making those connections should be our next step. And I can recall that as recent as 2015, pre 2015, there was actually an attempt by Agampe's organization, Plaque, to actually then move situation room to expand the situation room scope from just elections to governance. Because I think that elections, elections intervention cannot just be 4-year thing. In between is so critical to what happens the next 4 years. Whether there will be the right law in place, whether citizens will be incentivized to want to come out and vote. So all of those things, between governance, what takes place in the governance realm or governance conversations, and what happens during elections, we need to make those connections. I totally agree with her in that regard. Now, there was something that I think she also mentioned in her reaction that I think it's important. Why is it so easy for seemingly good people to get into office and change?
Yeah.
I have described that as, in one of my conversations, I said to people, look, the Nigerian system is corrupting.
Yeah.
So it's not just corrupt, it's corrupting.
It's corrupting, yes.
It's corrupting. You can get into office and you get sucked in. The civil service, the rules, the bureaucracy just makes it extremely difficult for you to actually be able to function. So one way we can begin to deal with that is for the change champions, for those similarly good people that get to office, they need us more when they get to office. So civil society groups, activists, development partners, you need to be available, to be on hand to support those who go to office with good intention to make change. Otherwise, the bureaucracy and the system will just
swallow them.
That's one.
And that's what I keep hearing. I do have another question here. Okay. By you were very engaging. We got some questions flooding in. So it says, how do we this is by Bashama Yusuf. It says, how do we ensure internal party democracies such as political parties produce popular and credible candidates for their citizens?
There is no easy solution to this. honestly, because when you understand the ideology of political parties, political parties are just organization or association of individuals jostling to take power and run the state. Okay. So which means when you look at it, it's just an association of private individuals looking for public power. They are just individuals. They are just private individuals. The only way those private individuals can get to office is through political parties. Now, if, however, political parties are now left only to money bags and the no-do goods in the society, they will always use the political parties as a platform to actually seeking control of public resources and not for your own interest. So in terms of how do we ensure that parties produce popular and credible candidates, a lot more Nigerians need to get to participate. For you and I mean, a lot of the times when I speak and someone, I've had the question, so why is someone like you not in politics? It's not my calling. Let me go religious. It's not my calling. It's not my calling. But on a more frank note, I think we need to get more Nigerians register and become members of political parties. It's not a 100-meter dash to reforming the political parties, because right now political parties are owned by money bags. But if we have more Nigerians joining political parties, more good Nigerians going into politics, joining political parties, gradually we can begin to build political parties that are truly responsive to the members and to the yearnings of the Nigerian groups. So that's one. I think secondly is to say that even where political parties do present the wrong candidates, Nigerians right now, we are under a multi-party democracy system. Nigerians have options. Unfortunately, we fail to exercise our right of refusal. Nigerians, sadly, feel when you vote for a less popular person, you are wasting your vote.
You're wasting your vote, yes.
I don't know what civil society groups needs to do to correct that. Okay? APC did not become APC just because of its members. APC is APC because Nigerians voted for it.
Yes.
PDP became PDP because Nigerians voted for it. Nigerians can create other bigger parties just by voting for them.
So that's more citizen engagement and making
it's that simple.
I feel like there's a sense of apathy in the process. Let me quickly go to the next question because I know that we're pressed for time. So this is by Dr. Bridget Egboha. It says, what of a situation where the executive appoints a member of civil society into the office, thereby shutting their mouths as they do with journalists?
So this is not new, and it's across democracies that government will want to engage in co-optation. So the co-optation sometimes are targeted at vocal civil society leaders. You co-opt them into government, as ministers, and then you hollow out, and weaken civil society. That happens. But, if we have, as we currently have in Nigeria, a robust civil society group, right, that is also connected. So that even when you then say, okay, I'm appointing Dayo, but the civil society to go into government, but civil society groups are deliberate in maintaining their connection and relationship with Dayo while in office. I think it gives a Dayo that confidence that I have the backing and the support of my
You have support, I see.
But what you often find is the moment a Dayo is appointed and Dayo accepts the first reaction is civil society groups. They are the first to condemn him. Oh, he has joined.
Yes.
He's going to join them.
That's the same thing that happened to some of our colleagues. Like,
I don't want to, that's why I chose to use my name, because I have examples. The moment you go, civil society groups, many of them will tell you that no, you shouldn't accept it. Oh, now by acceptance, you have also decided to join them. And so they severe relationship with you. And in actual fact, it is at that point that you actually need them most. So it goes back to my earlier point. When you have civil society groups or civil society leaders appointed to office, that's the point where civil society groups should rise up to provide assistance, to provide backing, and not allow such person to get into the bureaucracy among hyenas and therefore get sucked in.
Honestly,
Because it's a damn difficult thing. I will encourage, this is not an attempt to market a book, but I want to just reference particularly Bridget. Go and read Waziri Adio's Arc of Possibilities. It gives account of his sojourn, as the executive secretary of NATI. And it just, you will see how lonely sometimes it can be when you are a change agent and you are in a system that is extremely constraining. You need your constituency members to support you, to assure you that yes, you are fine.
And sometimes change has to come from the inside. So if you're on the inside, it's a bit more effective if you're able to effect. So because sometimes as an outsider, like with civil society, we're telling people we're trying to hold government accountable. But sometimes if one of us goes inside, we're able to say, okay, you can go back and report and says, yes, we can do this, but here are some of the constraints. What can we do?
Come and help me. Exactly.
Exactly.
But that will only be possible when the civil society members and the donor organizations are on hand to work with you. Often, like I said, they don't severe relationship. They stop calling you and they start calling you names as well to say, oh, he has joined them.
Yes.
It's an extremely difficult thing.
So, Dayo, one last comment. Okay, he follows Devsectorseries every week. So let's just do his comment here. Mr. Ahiaba, thank you so much for watching. So he says here, one of the most crucial things that can help improve voters' apathy is for the CSOs to work towards making the electorate's vote count. That comes before other measures you have suggested, because your vote has to count before a bad government can be voted out. Good discussion.
100%. We must make our votes count. And I think this has been the mantra for civil society groups in the last 10, 15 years. If you look at when we started the mandate protection movement in the country, it was based on the need to make our votes count. And what was mandate protection? Mandate protection was basically vote, stay back, monitor counting before you go home. It worked in some places, all right? In some other places, it didn't. Basically because the political class then also devised, let's arm people. If you arm people, those ones who want to stay back, when they hear the sound of guns, they will run away. But so you find that I totally agree with the point that we need to make our votes count. And I think I can mention quite a number of things that are now in place to make our votes count. Beginning with cleaning our voters register. That's a critical part of ensuring we have a transparent and a believable register, so that there are no manufactured names there. The introduction of the permanent voter card and all the gadgets, all the security things, installations that are in that permanent voter cards are also aimed at ensuring that it is the person that presents the card that is actually using it. It's part of making our votes count. The technology that INEC has introduced, and continue to improve on, to say that when you get to a polling unit, you have to go through a process of accreditation. You have to go through a process of validation before you then vote, and that your vote can also now be transmitted electronically. These, again, are part of efforts to make our votes count. We are not there yet, but I think it's important to note that, for the person that sent that question, to note that there is progress. And considering that, it's also something that we can connect to the security arrangements and planning that INEC now also puts in place. I think we can say that we are making progress in that regard, but we can still improve. And so that will be my final word to Nigerians out there. There is improvement in the electoral process. It's not perfect, but we cannot we cannot walk away and just say that our votes don't count, therefore we are not going to be a part of it. There is improvement in the electoral process. There is improvement in the infrastructures, in the electoral planning. And INEC, I think, has shown, its commitment to change. We can only, the only thing we can do at this stage is to continue to support the processes.
Thank you so much, Dayo. I think Ajiampe has some icing on the cake, which is pretty much a comment. She says a lot of groups are working on this, and that is why INEC has improved in the last few years. We are not there yet, but I think progress has been made. The introduction of BVAS will add some credibility in the 2023 general elections. There are also issues of community connivance in some areas, which adds to the challenges. So I just want to get your final thoughts before we let you go. Now, this is a good start to Devsector
Thank you so
series.
much. Let me thank Agampi for her final thought, because her final thought, the conclusion that there has been progress. I think it resonates with me. Elections in Nigeria has improved significantly, courtesy of a coterie of stakeholder groups, INEC being a part of it, civil society groups being a part of it. And I think government too, have also given support. We must acknowledge that. Political parties have been a part of it. Political parties could do more, right? We want them to do more. Security agencies have also contributed to this. I think that collaboration and cooperation gives me hope that we will continue to witness improvement. But the final point will be that we cannot afford to only talk about elections as though elections are an end. We must connect conversations on elections to governance, to be able to get, to assure more Nigerians that democracy, yes, matters, and democracy can impact them. Without those connections, I think we are likely to continue to try to fix the structural issues, legislative improvement, technology, but the content of democracy, which is freedom from hunger, freedom, assurance, freedom from rights violation, and all of those freedoms that democracy has promised. If we can't deliver that, I think it's going to continue to impact on elections in the country and the preponderance of, or rather, the whether or not Nigerians will come out to vote during elections.
Thank you so much, Dayo. This was such a good start to Devsector series this year. It's like there was a lot of engagement with the audience, and this is just, pretty much a start to what we're looking for in terms of making that connection between civil society and the public. And, and as you can see, there's a lot of engagement in that process as well. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dayo. This is not going to be the last invitation to Devsector series, so you'll be hearing from us soon. Again, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Again, you all, thank you so much for watching the Development Sector Series, which is Dev Sector Series, with Mr. Dayo Olaide talking about civil society organizations and the 2023 elections. Again, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us. And just understand that Dev Sector Series are Wednesdays at 12 noon. We're going to be having some great guests in the development sectors and other sectors to tell us what they're doing to change the world, and even kind of making technical and subject matter experts insights on current issues. So again, thank you so much for watching, and let us change the world together. See you on Wednesday at noon. Take care.